Well, it's a new week here at Politics and Religion, but let me tell you, things continue to charge forward. Where world events are concerned, there's so much on the table right now. President Obama is preparing to go to Israel for the first time of his presidency. Also, there are renewed talks between Israel and Turkey today. In the meantime, Israel is holding secret negotiations with Hamas, but I guess they're not secret anymore since you and I are talking about it. But there's a lot of things going on in our world right now. Increasingly, the news is coming in that perhaps Bashar Assad will be toppled in Syria, but that's not a done deal yet. We'll have to wait and see on that one. So a lot of things going on around the world. But I want to focus for a little bit today on this secret talks that are being held between Israel and Hamas. Do you remember after the last skirmish between Israel and Hamas, and all of a sudden there was a ceasefire? Everybody thought Israel was going to invade Hamas and Gaza. They didn't. There was a ceasefire instead. President Obama was involved. Egypt was involved. And it looked like there were things going on that no one knew about. Well, in fact, it was true. Now, let me remind you of something here. The Muslim Brotherhood are now ruling in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood gave birth to Hamas. Hamas participated in elections several years ago that was involved Fatah and Mahmoud Abbas. Well, to everyone's surprise, Hamas won the elections quite handily. Then Abbas continued to try to assert his power in Gaza, but finally one day Hamas just rose up and just drove him out. Well, now then Abbas has been in office for a long time without an election. He was supposed to have new elections 4, 5, 6 years ago. However, things are so volatile, they just cannot. So he just stays in office, and we just act like he's the legitimate leader, and everybody's sort of play acting here, trying to figure out what to do next. Well, now then, Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, over the great opposition of the United States of America and Israel, he ran off on November the 29th to the United Nations and requested non-member state recognition from the United Nations, and got it, as everybody knew he would, because there is so much anti-Israeli sentiment in the world community, especially at the General Assembly level. And so he received recognition. Well, this changed everything in the Middle East. However, it looks like with us dealing with Hamas, and all this has been developing since that time, it looks like perhaps we are throwing Mr. Mahmoud Abbas under the bus. If you want to go unilateral, we'll show you how to play unilateral. That appears to me to be what's happening right now, because if Israel and the U.S. can get a deal with Hamas, we don't need Mahmoud Abbas anymore, and we could teach him one big lesson. So what are they negotiating about in Israel? Let me read a few paragraphs of the article just so you'll get the idea. Israel has been holding secret negotiations with the Hamas terror movement since the end of its Operation Pillar of Defense, Channel 2 News in Israel reported on Friday. According to the report, the Egyptian-mediated talks are being held as part of the ceasefire reached between the sides at the end of counterterrorism operation in November, and which said that both sides will refrain from attacking one another and the sides will work to reach understandings. Channel News indicated that an Israeli delegation that arrived in Cairo on Thursday came to Egypt for the purpose of holding talks with Hamas through Egyptian mediators. Now, Hamas says we don't talk to Israel because we don't think they have a right to exist. And Israel says we don't talk to Hamas because they're a terrorist organization and they don't recognize our right to exist. But they're talking. So Hamas doesn't talk to Israel. Israel doesn't talk to Hamas. But the headlines is screaming Hamas and Israel are holding secret talks. So what's going on here? We know that President Obama has a meeting planned in Israel somewhere around March the 20th. It's being reported that Abbas, Netanyahu, and Obama will sit down together, perhaps also including King Abdullah of Jordan. There is something afoot here. And I suppose we'll have to wait to see what it is. However, I do suspect that perhaps the time has come to throw Mahmoud Abbas under the bus. He's been in power a long, long time. He has been basically ineffective, and he now has double-crossed the United States and Israel. They may well be ready to say, okay, you double-crossed us, therefore you're going to lose your power. I don't know that that's what's getting ready to happen, but it's the only sense that I could make of exactly what's going on. Now, there's one other factor to this that I find really interesting. Hamas has been asked about reaching a deal with Israel, and they said, well, we could never sign a permanent peace agreement with Israel, but we might be willing to sign a temporary, what they call a hudna, a peace treaty that would go on for a while. Well, Netanyahu has said, on the other hand, that he's not ready to sign a permanent peace deal with the Palestinians, but that he may be willing to sign an interim agreement. So you have two parties here. Hamas could overthrow Mahmoud Abbas tomorrow. Everybody knows that they already threw him out of Gaza. So they could overthrow Abbas tomorrow. And they say they want a temporary agreement. And Netanyahu wants a temporary agreement. And the Bible prophesies a 7-year agreement, a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis. Could that be what we see in the making right now? Now, I don't know that, except that Yossi Biland, who was one of the main negotiators in the Oslo Accords back in 1993, recently participated in a debate, and he stated that Netanyahu would be willing to do a temporary agreement. He doesn't want to do a permanent agreement because any permanent agreement is going to have to deal with the horrific issue of Jerusalem, and Netanyahu just cannot bring himself to yield anything in Jerusalem at all, and everybody believes he won't get a deal unless he does that. So consequently, maybe Netanyahu is going to say, okay, I will do a temporary agreement. Yes, we will go ahead and do provisional borders, and that's exactly what Balin said that Netanyahu expressed he was willing to do. And yet we'll leave the issue of East Jerusalem for 7 years from now. In the meantime, Muslims and Jews together can worship on the Temple Mount. Okay, now that would perfectly fulfill the prophecy that's given to us of what is coming. Do I know for sure all those details? I don't, but I put the pieces of the puzzle together, and I think most of those details are pretty well right. I guess the only real thing I'm not sure about is whether Hamas would be willing to sign on to a deal like this, and whether, in fact, they will throw Abbas under the bus and be willing to a deal with Hamas. But that may be determined, may have been discussed while Israeli representatives were in Egypt meeting with Hamas over the last 3 or 4 days. So interesting going on, and when you're dealing with this, you're dealing with the center of Bible prophecy. Now, in addition to that, Israel has now offered to lay a pipeline through Turkey, a gas pipeline. Now, you know that Israel and Turkey have been on the outs for the last 2 or 3 years, ever since the ship tried to run what was it called? Anyway, the ship tried to run the blockade, and Israeli troops boarded the ship. There were 9 people who were killed. Turkey said, you've got to apologize. Israel has not apologized. Only now she sort of has. And in the meantime, Turkey wanted to have anti-missile defense systems on the border between Turkey and Syria, and the U.S. said, if we're going to do that for you, you've got to heal your relationships with Israel. And so now all of a sudden it's coming out that Israel is selling military equipment to Turkey again for the first time in a long time. So there's a lot of movement going on. There's one other thing I want you to really get the sense of today. It's like we've come to a big crossroads, and everybody is hitting the reset button. Now, Hillary Clinton made a big deal out of pushing the reset button with Russia. And frankly, when she hit the button, it was supposed to light something up. Well, it failed. It didn't work. Well, that was embarrassing. Anyway, she's been banging away at that reset button for the last 4 years as Secretary of State. Didn't really look like it got much result, but now then it looks like everybody's hitting the reset button. President Obama is starting his second term. This is when he's going to build his legacy, hopefully. Hillary Clinton is gone. There's a new Secretary of State, John Kerry. They're trying to get a new Secretary of Defense, a new Secretary of the Treasury. Everything is being reset right now. Israel is dealing with Turkey again, and Turkey's dealing with Israel again, and Israel is now talking to Hamas, and Hamas is talking to Israel through Egypt, no less. So there's a huge reshuffling taking place. What does it all mean? Well, I'm not sure I know completely, but through the prophecies of the Bible, we can pretty well know what it all means. So anyway, that's what's going on. I didn't even mention the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI, a new pope being elected. The cardinals are hoping to have a new pope by the 15th of March because Holy Week, which is the Easter week, starts on the 24th of March. They want the pope to get in office so he can preside over this worldwide extravaganza. It's the biggest week of the year for the Roman Catholic Church. They don't want to enter that week without a pope. It's the perfect stage to present the new pope to the world. And so that's big news. I don't know whether that determined the date of the pope's resignation or not, but nevertheless, they are talking about convening the conclave quickly to elect a new pope. And by the way, we've already made the arrangements that our tour, which will be passing through Rome on the, what will it be? It'll be April the 24th, I believe, which is Wednesday. That's when the papal audience is held. And we have already moved to secure tickets for all of our travelers so that we can go there, and we will be meeting this new pope for the first time. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, because this pope is the 112th pope, and St. Malachi, a Roman Catholic seer, said he'll be the last pope, and during his days, Rome will be destroyed. So we're going there to take his picture, to learn all we can about him. Interesting times. Things are moving.